1 minute and the service will start shortly. Welcome to the journey. The service will begin soon.
Hey guys, welcome to the journey. I'm so glad you're here with us this morning. I'm excited to be with you, here with you guys to worship God. I'd like to stand. We're going to start by singing a couple songs. If you're new to the journey, I just want to say thanks so much for joining us. And just everybody, feel free to participate. However you feel comfortable, I hope this morning that you can grow and connect with God. Has anybody had a hard week this week? Anybody? I had a hard week. Some of you probably did. This first song is just talking about how we need to run straight to God. That's all we can do is run to Him. And He wants to be our safe place. That's what this first song is about. Again, just join in as you know the songs. Feel free to participate however you feel comfortable this morning. We're continuing our series this week, Because. All kinds of things in this world try to point us to them, try to entice us to all we really need is God. We need to run straight to Him. Small voice, align my heart to hear you in my Just about how Jesus is really the best friend that we're ever going to have, the only one that we can fully trust, the only one that fully knows us yet still loves us. And it's a new song. It's got kind of an easy chorus, so I thought I would kind of just go through the chorus with you guys, just to try to teach it to you. Brayden, if you want to go to the chorus there, I'm going to sing it just so you guys can kind of get a feel for it. What a friend I found in you, Jesus. What a friend I found in you. When no one else could keep their promise, I can always count on you. If you like to sing, try to sing it with us. What a friend I found in you, Jesus. What a friend I found in you. No one else could keep their promise. I can always count on you. What a friend I Lord, thank you for being the friend that never leaves, that always loves, and we can always count on. And when the world may fail, we still have you always. I pray that you would lean into our friendship, that we would lean into our friendship with you, and that we would grow to love you more, and to get to know you more, and connect with you more, starting this morning. I pray that you would touch each one of our hearts, God, that you would be here with us. In your name we pray. Amen. You guys are great to see.
Welcome to the journey. I'm Jenny. I'm the Next Steps Director here at the Northside. And I just wanted to say one other thing is I'm still getting over the chills that I just had singing with this team. I'm so grateful for these guys and be able to worship with them. So sorry. It's like so everything that's coming up here at the journey you can find on our blog. You can scan the QR code that's behind me in a minute. But you can find everything on there. But tonight we're having our Journey Teens Friendsgiving at 5 o'clock, and I'm excited to hear what the teens made for that. They're all making their own dishes and bringing it as a dish to pass, so that should be interesting. If it's your first time here, I just want to say welcome. Thanks for checking us out. If you want to fill out, there's a little guest card in the seat pocket in front of you. If you fill that out, bring it up to the Next Step Center up there in the lobby. We'll give you a small gift just to say thanks for checking us out. Coming up next, Brittany is going to be continuing our series Because, so check it out.
Friendsgiving thing just sounds super fun or whatever, so I look forward to that tonight. So I just want to ask you to think about something for me, and if you had to kind of summarize how big you thought God was and how active He was in our world, or maybe how long God has been working in the world, like what, if you had to kind of put it into your own words, what would you think about? If I said, where is God at work in the world? what would you say in response to that question? And I say that because sometimes I think we make our own worlds kind of small. I think there's a temptation to just kind of think about ourselves. Maybe we send it to our family, or maybe our workplace, our school, our community, something like that. But oftentimes when we think about our world, it's a lot smaller than what reality is. That we're really kind of small in comparison to everything that's happening in our world, everything that has happened in human history. And I think because of that, there can sometimes be a temptation that if we don't see God very specifically working in our own lives, that sometimes we can think, maybe God's stopped being involved in the world. Maybe God's not doing anything anymore. Maybe God's taking a nap, or whatever it is that you want to think about. Because I think sometimes if we don't see it sort of tangibly in our own lives, it's hard for us to believe that somewhere else, in somebody else's life, in some other community, that God might be at work in our world. And one of the ways that this kind of came home in a real way in my own life is when you think about maybe what God's been doing in West Michigan, maybe in the U.S., maybe in the Western world, something like that. I had several years ago, I was traveling in China. I got the opportunity to kind of grow, explore and see these different parts. And I'm by no means like an expert on China or anything like that. But I got a taste of a whole bunch of different aspects of Chinese culture and history and heritage and all those things. And one of the things I got to do is go visit the city of Xi'an in China. And I encountered something that kind of blew my mind in the way that I had grown up to think about the world, and specifically the role of Jesus in history of the world. Okay, so in Xi'an, there's this giant tablet. And the giant tablet, what it does is it marks out the introduction of Christianity to the Chinese people. And it was created in the 7th century AD. 635 is about when they think that this tablet was made. And what you can do is that one of the ways that they kind of commemorate that this is the very top of that tablet. What they do is they just kind of lay this piece of paper over it, and then they rub over it. And you get, so this tablet is huge, and this is just part of the very top of it. And I bought one of these rubbings from this tablet because my dad has loved collecting artifacts and things from around the world. And so I brought it home from China as a gift to my dad. I don't think I even asked him if I could borrow it. I think I just kind of ended up with this today. But one of the things it does is it reminded my dad, but it reminded me at that time that God has been at work in this world long before I had any idea. I don't know about you, but if you think about Christians in China, you're like, wasn't it just recently they heard about Jesus? And are they even allowed to believe in Jesus? What is going on? But the truth is that Christianity was introduced in mainland China long before it was introduced here in North America. This has been over 1,000 years that people in China have heard about the good news and the hope of Jesus. And when I heard it, I'm like, huh? How is that possible? Are there Christians in China today? This doesn't even make sense in my world, because I've grown up to believe that China's a communist country and it's illegal to believe in any God, let alone the God of the Bible. How is this possible? And through my time and my study and stuff like that, one of the things I've learned, and conservative estimates say that there are more followers of Jesus in China today than there are in the United States of America. I don't know about you, but that doesn't even compute in my mind, because it's illegal to be a Christian in China. And yet what has happened with the underground churches, it has changed lives and families and heritages and communities. Underground. And it's been changing the hope and the destiny of so many people in China. And I came to find out, this is all just totally new concept to me. And what I was reminded of, because I do know this to be true, but sometimes I forget it to be true, is God is so much bigger than my idea And God has been at work in our world so much longer than I can even fathom. That even in a place like China that seems like it'd be shut off from the hope of Jesus, God has been at work for centuries, changing and transforming lives. And we're in the middle of our series, Because. And one of the things we're going to talk about this morning is because everyone matters to God, we're called to be world changers. We're called to be. I want you to participate with me just for a second. Some of you are like, oh, I hate it when he does this, and he asks me for input. But I want you to participate. I'll tell you, there's not like a right answer to this, and you can have multiple responses. You don't just have to pick one of these. But I just want to ask you to respond to a couple questions that I'm going to ask you. Just by raising your hand really quickly. And just so you know, I already know what you're going to say. Like, how's that possible? We asked you these questions a while back, and I know what your response was. So I know what you're going to say. But what I want you to do is participate so that other people can see what your response would be. Ready for this? So the first question is, I'm just going to ask you why you're here this morning, or maybe why you're part of the journey, or maybe why you decided to check things out this morning. And the first question is, how many of you are here because of our building? Like, this is just an amazing facility, and you just can't wait to show up here. I don't see any hands raised. We had one last year. Jenny was cheating. I think she felt bad. It's not why you're here this morning. For our facility, we specifically asked last week, we've got a big goal. We want to make some updates to this facility, but it's not about this facility. How many of you are here because our band plays awesome music, and you just love listening? They're doing a good job. You guys told about 50% of people when we asked a while back said, because the music, like that's one of the things they love about this place. Again, we're going to keep going. You can, if you've already answered, you can still answer more of these. The next one, actually, I'll close my eyes for this one. Ready? How many of you are here because of the teaching? Just like, I know that that's not why most of you are here. Like, we do our best with our teaching. How many of you are just here because we give out free coffee? Like, yeah, I don't want to again. Like, yeah, I don't think I'm telling them. If I'm honest. Free coffee. How many of you are here just because somebody else dragged you here? Like, I don't even want to be here. Nobody's willing to tell the truth on that. But here's the last one. How many of you are here because of our mission? You sense that we're not just a place that's about ourselves, but we are trying to make a difference in our community and the world around us. You're here because of the mission of the journey, trying to make an impact. Like, that's like 100% why people are here. And as we visit, or as we're revisiting our mission and our vision of why we exist as a church, it's because of that. We want to be a church that's not just about ourselves. It's about making a difference in our community and the world around us. Because everyone matters to God. We're called to be world changers. The yard ambush changes in one person's life. It changes the ideas of our community and what our church, what followers of Jesus could look like when we go out to help somebody in our neighborhood. But we're not just about helping people in our neighborhood. We want to be a church that is called to change the world as well. But maybe that's kind of like hard for you to like, what are you talking about being world? This is Muskegon, Michigan. Like, even if you go to broader West Michigan, like, what difference are we going to make? We're not like Washington, D.C. or Beijing or something like that. Like, well, how can Muskegon participate in changing anything in the world? I just want to put it in perspective this way. Maybe you can think about it this way. I was in a conversation with a friend this week who's in the engineering and like manufacturing space. And I'm just kind of curious. The things that you make in your shop, like, how far away from here do they get? Like, if you had to think about how far away in the world, if you had to draw a line between Muskegon and the farthest place on the world that your parts end up, how far would that be? And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, I just want to know, like, how far do you distribute your products in the world? Like, do they make it to the other? It's like, well, we make airplane parts. We live like going around the world all the time. And he said, we have parts that are in Asia and Australia and all the way around the world. Last service, I had somebody come up with me afterwards and goes, I'm going to one up on that. I've got parts that are on the space station. That's cool. But here's the deal, like, Muskegon has, when you think about the automobile industry and the parts that we make here, and space industry and the stuff that we make here, there's so many other ways that things that are made right here, they end up all the way around the world. From Muskegon, Michigan. The world doesn't function without what we do here. So we talk about being world changers. All you have to really do is think about how you can play a small part in creating something here that affects things that happen around the world. So when we talk about being world changers, I just want you to hear this, that there's nothing that God would want to do in the world that couldn't start right here in Muskegon, in West Michigan. There's absolutely nothing in the world that He would want to do in the world that it couldn't begin right here. In a community of followers of Jesus, say, hey, we just want to be surrendered and obedient and transformed by the hope and love of Jesus. And if God wants to do something revolutionary, it can start right here. And I just think about it this way. When we pair our work with our worship, it can change lives all around the world. If you're in one of those spaces, you're like, I'm shipping stuff to the other side of the world, or I'm making airplane parts and they're going around the world, or I'm shipping stuff to outer space, whatever it is, when you take what you do that affects the world and you pair it with your relationship with Jesus and the way that you can contribute and give generously through an act of obedience and surrender and worship to God, it changes lives all around the world. I just want to look at one story from the Bible this morning that I think helps put into perspective why we want to do what we do as a church, why we exist. And it's from the book of Matthew. It's in chapter 25. And the truth is, Jesus, in this entire book, in this entire chapter of Matthew, Jesus is introducing people to this new kind of kingdom that He's establishing in our world. Jesus has come to be the one and only King of all kings. And the people that He was with originally, they were Jewish people. The term that they gave Him was Messiah, the chosen one. And that their hope was that when the Messiah would come, that He would bring His army and His weapons, and He would overthrow Roman rule in their world, so finally they could be free of their oppressors. And finally they could be the ones in control. And finally they could be the dominant group once and for all in this world. And Jesus did come, and He did establish His kingdom, but it was totally different than what anybody was expecting. And throughout Matthew chapter 25, He just uses these analogies or these metaphors for what His kingdom is actually about and what it's supposed to be like. And this is just one of those ones that we're going to see in Matthew chapter 25. So it starts like this in verse 31. It's right in the middle of Matthew chapter 25. When the Son of Man comes in His glory and all the angels with Him, He will sit on His glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before Him. And He will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on His right and the goats on His left. So again, it says, when I come in my glory, I will sit on a throne. Who sits on a throne? A king over a kingdom. Somebody establishing a new people, a new nation, whatever that looks like. And it says, I just want to focus on this, it says, all the nations will be gathered before Him. The good news of Jesus has always been intended for all people, from all places, for all times. It's always been for everybody. Jesus says, in my kingdom, people are going to come from all the different places of the world. I don't know if you ever thought a whole lot about how nations kind of work. There's been a lot of conversation in our nation about the need for geographical boundaries to establish us as a nation. Whatever you think about that, that's one of the things is like, there's certain people that are part of your nation and certain people that don't belong to your nation. That's just kind of how nations work. But then Jesus says, that's not how my kingdom is going to work. People from all over, from every part of the world, from all of history, are going to be part of this kingdom that I'm establishing. And then it gets into this thing about sheep and goats, and you're like, what do you mean? I'm not like a farm animal. What is he talking about? Jesus is just using a metaphor that the people that he was teaching at the time would have been able to relate to. Maybe you've seen a sheep or a goat, or maybe you've got one at home as a pet or whatever it is. But we don't live in a world where people are as familiar with sheep and goats and all that stuff. But in Jesus' day, it would have been very common. There would have been farmers and shepherds and all that stuff. It would have been, everybody would have known what he's talking about when he's comparing people to sheep and to goats. And there's a couple things he's just kind of pointing. One is it's just a symbolic thing. He's not actually calling you or me a sheep or a goat or anything like that. But he's just using a symbol. So in one sense, it doesn't really matter what Jesus is picking up. He's just making a distinction between two groups of people in this sense. And he's relating to the way that people would have been able to understand it. But then there's this other thing. Sheep and goats, even though they might at times kind of look similar, smell similar, sound similar, like sometimes my kids are playing and making an animal sound, like, is that a sheep sound or a goat sound? I don't know what you're going for in that. There's some ways that seem similar, but they have fundamentally different DNA. They're different creatures. So when you think about them, they're not the same. Then there's also something about their nature. I don't know why, we've been talking about sheep a lot at the journey these past few months. One of the things we know about sheep is kind of dumb, right? But the sheep are also obedient. They know their shepherd's voice, and they listen and follow the shepherd's voice. That's kind of how they operate. So a shepherd leads the sheep and talks to the sheep and guides the sheep, and the sheep do what a shepherd does. You know what goats do? Not that. Goats are kind of stupid in a sense. They're kind of like independent, kind of troublesome at times, but when somebody's trying to work with goats, they don't try to herd the goats and stuff. They kind of chase goats. Right? Like goats have a mind of their own, and they're going to do their own thing. So Jesus is also saying there's one group of creatures that are kind of obedient. There's this other one that's kind of independent-minded. That's what he's trying to do in this picture. So we're going to continue on in Matthew chapter 25. Verse 34 says, "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me.' Then the righteous will answer, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? Or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in? Or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go visit you?'" Again, the picture Jesus is saying, there's the king sitting on his throne, and here's these sheep and these goats out in front of him. He's saying, my kingdom is made up of people that would look out for the least of these. The overlooked, the poor, the neglected, the outsiders, the misfits, the sick. My kingdom is made up of the kind of people, the kind of creatures that would look out for those people. But the people are listening to his teaching like, how's that possible? You're the king on the throne. You don't need anything from anybody. We don't have access to you. How could we possibly have clothed you or given you something to eat, something to drink? How could we have cared for you in prison when you're sick? How is that even possible? The king doesn't need any of those things from his people. And the king's response is this: "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Jesus is saying this new kingdom that I'm inviting you to participate, it's a kingdom where we're looking out for the least, for the forgotten, for the overlooked, the neglected, the outsiders, the misfits, the sick, the poor amongst us. Because in the world that Jesus was living, they wanted everything to be about the king. They just wanted, Jesus, would you finally bring your armies and overthrow so we can finally have power, we can have the status and the privilege? And Jesus says, okay, but there's an upside-down economy in the kingdom that I'm creating, because if you're the kind of people that look out for these overlooked ones, that's what my kingdom is about. He said, anytime you serve one of those people, you are serving me. Because we're part of a new kingdom, we can be world changers. when we think about it, it's just Muskegon, Michigan. How could we possibly change the world? Jesus says, if you're willing to look out for the poor, for the orphan, for the widow, for the sick, for the disenfranchised, for the misfit, if you're willing to look out for them, to serve them, make a difference in them, you're making a difference in this new kingdom. You are serving your king. You are doing for them, and because you're doing for them, you're doing for me. All we have to do is say, okay, we don't have the political power, the resources to create something that will change the world, but we do have the ability to be obedient to the shepherd. Say, God, if you want us to look out for these people, we're going to do that. We're in this series because every person matters to God. We're going to be that kind of church that says, we're not just going to look out for ourselves. We're going to try to serve and be generous towards all of those people that Jesus identified. The poor, the sick, the orphan, the widow, the outcast, the lonely, the prisoner. All of those things, because Jesus says that's what his new kingdom is all about. Here at the Journey, over the years, we've established some partners that we've consistently tried to encourage and visit and help and resource throughout the years. And we've got several of those that we just want to highlight as part of this Because series. Last week, we shared this sort of audacious goal. And we said for our campus, our goal is to raise $250,000 over the next 2 years as part of this campaign. And we can't do it with just like one or two people doing it. We can do it together if we're willing to be obedient and generous. That over the next 2 years we can hit that goal. But one of the things we said is the first part of that goal is going to be given away to our partners around the world. As a church, we're not going to say, let's look out for ourselves. The first funds that come into that, we're going to give them away to fuel what God is doing around the world through our global partners. One of the ones that some of you have been to visit, you've seen our people tell their stories. We've been partnering with for a long time is Compassion International in a village called Santa Rosa, Peru. And there's going to be some pictures that are just going to kind of rolling, but you can see some of the pictures about Santa Rosa. And you can see that Santa Rosa, Peru is a part of the world that's not a lot like our world. The homes, the structures, the roads look differently. There's deep poverty in Santa Rosa. But we've had people over the years sponsor Compassion Kids that are based in Santa Rosa. And what's happened is several years ago, we also, as a church, committed to funding a community center in Santa Rosa. It continues to change that community. When you sponsor a Compassion Kid, it gives that kid access to food, clothing, and education. And when a kid gets that in Santa Rosa, Peru, it doesn't just affect their own individual life, it changes the trajectory of their family. And when several of us do that together in one town through a community center, it doesn't just affect one kid, it doesn't just affect one family, it changes the entire community. Because this community center we built, it's not just a place for kids to come and get fed, it's also kind of a school, but it's also a gathering place where people can hear about the hope of Jesus and the goodness of Jesus, and that community center becomes a beacon of hope in that community for those families. And so we've been partnering with Compassion for a long time. But one of the things we want to do with this Because campaign, and you'll see more details on all this in the brochures that are going to see in front of you. If you don't have to see one in front of you, there's some in the back also. You'll see more details about what we're trying to do, but we've done the Hope Christmas Project for years, and we've just given the funds we can collect for our Hope Christmas Project away for our global partners. But we're trying to go bigger and better than ever. And the first chunk of money that we get as part of this campaign, we want to send to our Compassion partners in Santa Rosa for a couple of things. One is we want to continue resourcing that community center so they can continue meeting the needs of the community and being a beacon of hope. But the other thing is there are, over the last several years and COVID and all that stuff, for different reasons, some of the sponsorships have fallen off in Santa Rosa, and there's more kids that need some sponsorship, and we just want to use some of those funds to sort of bridge the gap. We'll do another Compassion Sunday again in the future where you can sponsor a kid. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you can sponsor a kid eventually. But in the meantime, we want to bridge the gap. So that some of those kids that have been sponsored and they're currently not, that they can continue being there. But Peru is also maybe the country that's been hit hardest on the whole planet by COVID. There's just several reasons. Part of it is just kind of the infrastructure, the medical facilities, the economics of Peru. It's been a really difficult season for COVID, and they're just now sort of starting to open back up after years of being devastated. And it's just wreaked havoc, especially in a small town like Santa Rosa and people's livelihood and all that stuff. So we just say, hey, we want to do what we can to help. That maybe if we can change the lives of one kid, one family, one community, we're helping change the world by being obedient to what Jesus said. Care for people like these. You'll hear more about it in the weeks ahead. We also, for years, have partnered with Verve Church in Las Vegas. The journey's always been a little bit unique, a little bit different. The way we do things is a little bit different. The people that we're reaching is a little bit different. And because of that, it's always been a little bit interesting, like find churches that make it similar. One of the churches that we have found over the years that kind of just does things similarly, and reaches people in a similar way, and reaches similar kinds of people is Verve Church right in Las Vegas. And we partnered with them over the years, and we've sent people there. But one of the things we want to do is just send Verve Church some funds to help with their outreach efforts so they can continue communicating the hope of Jesus with Sin City. And that more people might hear about Verve and the good news of Jesus through Verve and continue to allow Jesus to change Vegas through what they're doing there. We've established a new partnership with Converge Caribbean. A couple weeks ago, I spent some time with Converge pastors. Converge is just an association of churches that we partner with. I got to sit in this room with about 40 different pastors, but there's pastors from the Midwest, from the Southeast U.S., and then from the Caribbean. And there's pastors that look like me, and then there's African-American pastors and Spanish-speaking pastors, and there's young guys and old guys just across the board. It's just such a cool room to sit in. It's just a privilege to be part of what Converge is doing. And one of the things that Converge is trying to do is start more churches in the Caribbean. And one of the things we're going to do as part of our Hope Christmas Project and this Because campaign is that we're going to sponsor a pastor in Haiti for a year. And the truth is, Haiti's another one of these countries that's just been devastated. And natural disasters, political and economic upheaval. I've been to Haiti a couple times in my life. Wonderful people and just such kind of hopeless circumstances across their nation. And one of the things that's a challenge if you want to be a pastor in Haiti, oftentimes that means you have to do the work of being a pastor, but also find funding for your family. You have to work another job so you can do that. And what we can do as a church is we can just offer to fund a pastor for a year. And when we do that, that pastor's like the family's needs are met. You don't worry about all that. You can just focus on sharing the good news of Jesus with people in this community. We just want to unleash a Haitian pastor to be able to do that. We're partnering with Converge Caribbean in order to do that. And we've talked about Restore Church and Justin McFarland and his family, and church that they're in the middle of launching here in our community in Northern Shores. And one of the things we want to do with those funds is just to give them an initial gift to say, hey, we want to set you up for what they're doing. So I say all that because when we talk about an audacious goal, $250,000 over the course of 2 years, I don't know how to stretch you like, yeah, sounds great, let's do it. Or if it's on like, how in the world is that going to be possible? I'll just tell you this, our first commitment is to say, before anything else, our first dollars are going to help our global partners. That's what we want to do with our first funds. As a church, we want to lead with generosity towards the world around us because it's what Jesus tells us this kingdom is about, being obedient, helping people from all nations find and experience the hope of Jesus, because he's calling all of us to listen to his voice and obey his voice. So we're going to continue partnering, but my question for you today is, will you be part of the cause? Will you be a world changer? I'm not asking you for anything right now today. We're asking you to be prayerful about this. Would you use some of your resources, some of your dollars to partner with us in the weeks and months ahead? Our goal is that the first gifts to this campaign will be given by the end of the year. But next Sunday, we're actually going to have an opportunity for you to make a commitment to that. We sent out a letter this week with some pledge cards in it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's some in the boxes at the back there. You just grab one. But if you're willing to commit to a pledge, it actually just helps us know, like, how are we doing? How can we plan ahead with these funds? We said the first 10%, $25,000, we're going to give away. The next 10% we're going to save for the future. And then everything else we're going to use to try to upgrade this facility. We'll talk more about that last week. But we're going to lead with generosity towards the world because we believe that a group of people, even here, just in Sleepville, West Michigan, Muskegon, that when we partner together, we can partner together to change the world with the hope of Jesus. Will you play your part? Will you be prayerful? And really my hope is that whatever it is that you feel like God is prompting in your life, whether it's a small gift or something that you consider a crazy amount of generosity, whatever it looks like, just be obedient to whatever God would want from you. That you listen to the shepherd's voice. That you obey and you partner with us to try to change the world. Will you pray with me? God, I thank you for really your generosity to us first. That you didn't spare even your one and only child that we might be rescued. When you think about that, you have poured out all the riches of your kingdom over each of us. You have given us the greatest gift imaginable, that is new life, everlasting life, because of Jesus. Now, God, you have been at work in this world long before any of us even recognize that you've been changing the world generation after generation, and there are more people today following Jesus than there ever have been in human history, and you continue to change the world, and you invite us, even as small as we are, to be a part of that. God, would you help us to see how doing for one might affect a family, might affect a community, might change the world, God. Grateful to be part of this community. And I pray that we would be obedient to your voice and that we would follow you in all the ways that you did. So we love you. We pray these things because of the hope we have in Jesus' name. Amen.
We're going to invite you to a couple of songs. If I need you to stand and sing with us.
You provide a place for me.
you a list of songs that we sing here at the Journey. It's a great way to learn the songs for Sundays, but also just to worship God during your week. So if you are interested, you can scan any of the QR codes behind you to get the playlist of the songs that we sing. Just want to remind you guys that tonight is Friendsgiving for Journey Teens, 5 o'clock right here at the Journey. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.